We are in 3 John. Let me give you a scenario that I have contemplated from 1 John, 2 John, 3 John. Now, with those 3 letters, what you have is basically the Apostle John, and the Apostle John is writing to the elect, is writing to the church, to the brethren, I should say. And in 2 John, he's writing to the elect lady, and I do believe that Brother Woods is right in his understanding that that is a lady of the congregation, wherever she is. He doesn't tell us. And then you have 3 John, and you have 3 men that are involved in 3 John. You have Gaius and Diotrephes, who's not a good man, and Demetrius. Now, the scenario I'm talking about is goes something like this. As I see it, it's possible that the Apostle John wrote to the brethren, 1 John, and he sent the letter by the messenger Demetrius. And I'll show you in a moment some of the concept behind that. And when he sent the letter, there were those who received it and there were those who did not receive it. The preeminent one in 3 John is Diotrephes, and he did not receive the letter. He did not receive John. He did not receive the messenger, Demetrius. He did not receive the brethren, and he would cast out those who would even try to get close. Well, he wrote Gaius in order to help Gaius understand that Gaius was a good man. He also wrote the elect lady because she needed to hear that her walking in truth, walking in love, walking in the commands of God, walking in the light, was seen and heard and understood. Not only was she doing that, but so also were her children. And I believe it would be her offspring, her kin. But he had to let her know that her courtesy and her Christian attitude and mindset is a good mindset that she's been practicing, but don't practice it with everybody. You cannot love those who hate God. That's what we learn from Jehoshaphat out of the Old Testament. There is a certain reaction, there's a certain response, there is a certain thing out of love that you do concerning those who are teaching error. And John would write the first letter that discussed error. He writes the second letter to the elect lady around the same time frame as the third letter. And with the second letter, he's letting the elect lady know, whosoever goes beyond, transgresses, and abideth not, dwelleth not in the teaching of Christ, the doctrine of Christ, hath not God. She has to understand that. And he's not getting on to her. He thinks a lot of this lady. But he knows that good people can be overtaken with error, false doctrine. So she's not to fellowship such men. Well, he also wrote, I think it would appear, at the same time, because he's the one that caused the problem. Pardon me. That which he writes about to Gaius is about Diotrephes. He's the one that caused the problem. Diotrephes is just the opposite of Gaius, just the opposite of the elect lady, just the opposite of what 1 John has been teaching, that we love one another and we care one for the other. Those who are walking in the light. Well, Diotrephes did not care about John. He rejected John's first letter. But this next letter, 3 John, was sent to Gaius. All those letters, I think, were probably carried by the messenger Demetrius. Again, I'll show you why in just a moment. You might think about that, and as you're thinking about that, notice with me 3 John 1, verse 11. I've always used this passage to summarize what's going on with the characters, the righteousness, the goodness, the doing good, practicing what God has said out of the book 3 John. Beloved, imitate not that which is evil. Diotrephes. But that which is good. Gaius. He that doeth good is of God. He that doeth evil hath not seen God, hath not experienced, been known to what God is. Now, John, in the letter of 3 John, will help us to understand what he means by imitate the good. Imitate the good. 1 John tells you as well. He starts out in verse 1. The elder unto Gaius the beloved, whom I love in truth. Now, some people believe that what John has done, he's writing to an elder of the congregation. I don't think so. Some people believe that John is the elder, and he is, but he is a presbyter. He is an elder in the church. I don't think that's what John is driving at. John is talking about his age. Now, some would then conclude, well, there's a lot of some people thinking different things. There are a lot of different thoughts concerning what John has written. So obviously, they say, since John is the elder, that means that this letter was written in the 80s and 90s AD. No, it doesn't. It just means he's up in age. It doesn't mean that he's as old as Jerry, and Jerry is as old as dirt. But it does mean he's of the older kind, like me. I'm 60. Jerry's a lot older than that. So John is an older person. Now I want you to listen. I'm just going to read it. There's no reason to turn to it. Philemon 1:9. Here's Paul writing to a good friend. Yet for love's sake, I rather beseech thee, being such a one as Paul the aged, and now also a prisoner. So Paul says, I'm an elder. I'm an aged one. He's using an adjective. John is using a noun. Paul is less than 70 years old. There's a variety of reasons why commentators think that that's a good thought. By the way, in case you thought I was 60, I'm not. I haven't seen 60 in a lot of years. Decades. Wanda says decades. So, what's your point, Ron? I'm simply pointing out, watch this. John does not have to have written 1 John, 2 John, 3 John in 80 AD or 90 AD. He could have written it, and I think he did, in 60 AD, and he still would have fit the idea of being an aged one or an elder. We're now looking at the first major point that we would have in our mind. There are 3 in this book. So in chapter 1, verses 3 through 8, imitate Gaius the good. Remember, our basic theme is verse 11. Imitate not, but imitate the good. So he expresses some comfort. That's the first subpoint that he would have. He says in verse 2, beloved, and he's talking about Gaius, I pray that in all things thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth. So here is a good friend of John, and he wants him to know, look, I pray for you. And you'll notice the prayer has to do with his health. It has to do with his soul. It has to do with his finances. It has to do with his mental thinking. Watch. I pray that in all things thou mayest prosper and be in health, comparison, even as thy soul prospereth. John would pray for the physical, material, earthly good of a brother in Christ and others as well. However, he would hold to the good of the soul as a higher concept. Notice in verse 3, Gaius had a good reputation. I rejoice greatly. I don't just rejoice, I rejoice greatly, brethren, when brethren came and bear witness unto thy truth, even as thou walkest in truth. You may remember we heard that a dozen times, 4 times in just a short 2 or 3 verses concerning the elect lady. Well, Gaius is the same way. So when you walk in truth, you walk in the light, you walk in the commands of God, you're doing what God has said do. You're being righteous. So it makes the Apostle John feel great. He rejoices in that concept. Brethren, if you do not rejoice over the salvation of the worst of us, then something is wrong with your spirituality. But here, this is the best of us. Notice now verse 4, he continues on. It gave John great joy for hearing of Gaius's faithfulness. Greater joy have I none than this, to hear of thy children walking in truth. Most godly men can teach their children to be godly. They may not listen, but you can teach them. I want you to also notice that he sees Gaius as a faithful brother. But looking at verse 4, he says, greater joy have I none than this, than to hear. A lot of times we say, well, that's hearsay. It's not hearsay if you're hearing from a witness that knows what he's talking about. He has to have the true and precise and good and accurate knowledge. He has to have a capability to discern what is good and not. He has to have the character of integrity and honesty in order to give you an honest evaluation of what he sees and what he himself hears. There's nothing wrong with hearing a brother talk about brethren. Of course, when you're saying things that are good, you rejoice in that. When you're hearing slander, you need to shut that down right quick. So he would show and express comfort concerning Gaius. Furthermore, here's the commendation, second subpoint, commendation expressed, looking at verse 5 through verse 8. Beloved, thou doest a faithful work in whatsoever thou doest toward them that are brethren and strangers withal, who bear witness to thy love before the church. Here's what I see in this particular text. First of all, it is a faithful work and you are doing it. It means to labor. It means there's activity. It means to perform, not perform on a stage, but do something, do what is right. There is an exertion of energy. He is one who would do. But in this particular case, it would be a faithful work that he would do, and he would do it toward the brethren and strangers. Now, there's a nuance in that particular phrase that is missed in the English, I think. Toward them that are brethren and strangers. When you leave off the withal, it leaves you the impression that Gaius is a gentleman who would help brethren and he would help strangers. Whether that's what John is taught, whether Gaius is one to help strangers or not, I do not think is in John's mind. From the standpoint of non-brethren, what he's saying is, you are one that would help brethren even when you do not know them. Here's the literal meaning of strangers withal. To them that are brethren and that strangers. And what I mean is that strangers, you don't know them, but yet Gaius knew one way or another. Gaius knew one way or another that these were faithful brethren. He may not know them, but they will have truth verified concerning who and what kind of brethren they are. He would extend good things toward them, such as toward Demetrius, if Demetrius was an unknown individual to him. And they, the strange brethren, the brethren he doesn't know, and the brethren that he does know, they would bear record to the love, the giving forth of kindness concerned to the church and before the church. Looking now at the second part of verse 6, whom thou wilt do well to set forward on their journey worthily of God. You do a good work. Looking at verse 7, because that for the sake of the name they went forth, taking nothing of the Gentiles. There's a number of things that we might want to look at, and I just asked what you think about this if you would like to express something. But we take note that he would do this because of the name of Jesus. In Christ, you will do some things that you normally may not do that are of good report. In this particular case, these brethren would go in the name of the Lord, taking nothing of the Gentiles. What does that indicate to you? Now, remember, in the first century, you had messengers, you had preachers, you had men who were traveling everywhere, evangelizing wherever they went, and they would go unto brethren's houses, and the brethren would keep them and extend hospitality toward them. And John is saying that they would not take a thing from Gentiles. Brethren would not take anything from Gentiles. Is that the way you understand that? That's the way I see what he's saying. Now I want you to see some things. Now, of course, I don't have things set up to where you can see these websites. But here is the first website. Online giving. Go to the Church of Christ website, and now you can use PayPal, and you can do some online giving. That may have come from the Chisholm Trail Church of Christ, because now they tell you how to donate. Now, whenever you look on the internet, you can multiply these pages, multiple upon multiple upon multiple. I didn't want to do that. I just gave you 2 pages, printed off 2 pages. Church of Christ, you can donate. Church of Christ, you can donate. Church of Christ, you can donate. Here, if you want to donate to the Church of Christ. Do you see something different in what is being practiced by these brethren and what John has been saying in the text? I do. I hope you do too, but if you don't, correct me now. Since you didn't correct me, I must be right. Now, it would be good for every one of these brethren to read this particular passage and come to the same conclusion that I just put forth. Don't be begging for money over the internet. Well, Ron, we're not begging. We're just giving Gentiles an opportunity to support what we're doing, and what we're doing is a good work. Okay, that's fine. What John did was a good work. What Gaius did was a good work. What the strangers and brethren in going throughout the land were doing was a good work, but they didn't take a thing from the Gentiles.
I think Jerry has something to add.
Kind of repeat what he says, if you would, and tell him to go sentence by sentence as if somebody were interpreting him.
Paul tells us
Paul tells us when
to give
to give
upon the first
day of the week.
Now, I don't do that.
No, I don't do that
when I use the internet.
when I use the internet.
That's it.
Just do the online thing.
That's it.
In the assembly.
Can you
set up that link where you can give, but
Yeah,
only
on Sunday
on Sunday morning. It only works on Sunday mornings at roughly 10:43.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Are you hearing that, Ron?
Yeah, there's about a dozen different things that have come up. I would say number one, giving as we have been prospered upon the first day of the week, 1 Corinthians 16, 1 and 2, 2 Corinthians 8 and 9, is the major way that brethren support gospel preaching and gospel endeavors. It's the major way. Now, in Galatians chapter 6, as we have opportunity, let us do good unto all men. Also in Luke chapter 10, you have the Good Samaritan who would help the gentleman on the side of the road, and he was commended for that. Now, the distinction would be this: we give as we've been prospered, so that as a group we can glorify God's name and we can worship by our giving. When we give, we worship God, and when we give, it has as its objective is to help brethren preach the gospel, help brethren to edify brethren, and help to do good works among not only Jews and Gentiles, but also these heathens that live around us.
Yeah.
That's one thing. Now, the other thing is, we in a worship situation do not hand out the basket to brethren, and then when we have visitors who are heathens, I hope you understand how I'm using that, who are heathens, we grab the basket from them and won't let them give. There is a distinction between begging folks to give and not getting in the way. We invite no non-Christian. There's not a single non-Christian that we invite to partake of the Lord's Supper with us. But we don't get in their way. It's not a closed communion. It's not a closed giving upon the first day of the week. Non-brethren can do whatever they want to do, but I'm not going to ask them to give. I'm not going to beg them to give. So those are just a couple of things. I see somebody wrote something, McDonald. Could this possibly be read as they went forth preaching to Jews and taking nothing, or rather, not to mention what they preached to the Gentiles? It could be like the Apostle Paul, but I think he would have it would have been put that way more so. Paul would go into Gentile cities, and there'd be some Jews there, but he wouldn't take money from those folks where he was visiting. He would, time and again, have brethren support him from what he's done in the past. He would take that, Philippians, Corinthians, so forth. Now, after they got to know Paul and became Christians, then he would sometimes take support from them. But in that particular area, you're talking about a matter of judgment. He tells you it's a matter of judgment. I did not take anything from you. I didn't want to have you thinking that I was preaching for money. It's what he's letting them know. But I don't think that's what's going on in 3 John. I think he's actually saying they didn't go out and ask for donations from the neighborhood where they were preaching, which would fit what Paul did as well. I don't think it's wrong for the church to accept donations from Gentiles. For instance, Boone Pickens, if he wants to give us money, he's going to have to be resurrected from the dead and give us the money, but he could give us the money. That was Wanda. That was not my joke. Well, sort of. But I've told you the story of walking in my first full-time work in Ringling, Oklahoma. And a Methodist gentleman who walked every day saw me walking toward him, and we talked for half a second. And he said, "Mr. Cosby, here, go buy your children some shoes." And I went back in time in my mind, and Jerry may remember this, but a good old time brother was offered money from a non-believer. And somebody reprimanded him. And the good brother said, "Well, the devil has had the money too long." Well, I'm not necessarily calling, well, I can, but I'm not necessarily calling the Methodists a devil, but I didn't turn the money down. And I think that's the idea that Wanda is expressing. You don't beg for donations from non-brethren. And our children had shoes. Now, me, I was going barefooted in the pulpit, but they had shoes. So you can see the hospitality that is in mind. Whew. Let me say this, care must be taken when brethren withdraw fellowship. However, care also must be taken when brethren avoid withdrawing fellowship. So when you withdraw fellowship, be careful. When you say, "I'm not going to withdraw fellowship in this situation," be careful. What? Well, as I've mentioned, and Sue asked the question, so I'm really answering her question, and you'll get the gist of what's going on. With 2 John, with the elect lady, he tells her this: "If there come unto you and bring not this doctrine, receive him not into your house, neither bid him Godspeed, for he that biddeth him Godspeed is partaker of his evil deeds." On the other hand, what you have in the context of 3 John is Diotrephes rejecting the brethren. He's withdrawing fellowship from them. So he tells the elect lady, withdraw fellowship. He tells Gaius and Diotrephes, you were wrong to withdraw fellowship. Both of those things can be wrong. You can withdraw fellowship from folks you ought not. And you can fail to withdraw fellowship from folks that you ought. Let's take notice in 3 John 1:9. We now have imitate not Diotrephes the evil. Here you have John's condemnation of Diotrephes. He expresses it, especially in verse 9 and 10. "I wrote somewhat unto the church, but Diotrephes, who loveth to have the preeminence among them, receiveth us not." So he rejected John's message. Folks, when you reject an apostle or a messenger of God, you reject God. He won't even have fellowship with God because he is one who loveth to have the preeminence. He reveres first place. See me, do what I say, do what I want. I wrote concerning Diotrephes, who receiveth us not. Furthermore, verse 10, therefore, if I come, I will bring to remembrance his works which he doeth, prating against us with wicked words. So he's reminded, and he's going to remind Diotrephes, and he's going to remind the church of the wicked deeds of Diotrephes. Furthermore, he tells you some of the things that he's doing. He's not just rejecting the apostle and brethren and the messengers. He's slandering them. To berate idly or mischievously, vicious, atrociously, wicked, malice, defamation, slander. That's Diotrephes. Not only should you be careful in rejecting a man of God from the standpoint of fellowship, you need to be careful what you say. Diotrephes overstepped his bounds. Still in the same verse, verse 10, not content therewith, he wasn't happy with just raking John over the coals. Neither doth he himself receive the brethren. He did not receive, and I think mainly standing out would be Demetrius, the messenger. He didn't receive the message. He didn't receive John, and by connection, he didn't receive God. Furthermore, he rejected the brethren. He rejected the messenger. But it goes and becomes worse than that. Continuing on. Them that would, those that would receive, he forbiddeth, casteth them out of the church. Let us suppose that that's the elect lady. Let's suppose it's someone like the elect lady. She's very courteous. She's very courteous to Demetrius. Diotrephes gets on to her, yells at her, cast her out. Well, John has let her know, look, there is a time that you do withdraw fellowship, but you're the type lady that walks in the truth, and you're going to help those who walk in the truth. Gaius is the same way. He walks in the truth. He helps those who are walking in the truth. He's not like Diotrephes. Diotrephes cast out. He withdraws fellowship from them. He removes them from church membership. How does he do that? Does he do that physically? Is he one who has financial call over them? What? Don't know. It doesn't say. It just said, you're out of here. He was an overbearing, preeminent. Who wants to finish that? John says in verse 11, imitate the faithful Gaius, not the self-centered Diotrephes. Beloved, imitate, mimic, not that which is evil, Diotrephes, but that which is good. He that doeth good is of God. He that doeth evil hath not seen God. So if you wanted who to fellowship, who's doing good according to God's will? Walking in the truth, walking in the light, walking in the commands of God. Who is helping brethren? Who is holding to the pattern of sound words? Who is teaching and abiding in the doctrine of Christ, the doctrine from Christ? Those are the ones that you help. But if you're going to reach out and help those who are against God, then you're particular with his evil deeds. There's a good statement out of, I forgot where I found it, but it has to do with Jane Eyre, who, there's a book. What is it? Jane Eyre? Is that? Yeah, Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre. It was a book written by Bronte, Charlotte Bronte. Jane is sent to Lowood School, a charitable institution that educated orphans and poor girls. Jane was victim of various injustices. She arrives angry and wanting revenge. At the school, however, she makes friends with a girl named Helen Burns. From Helen, she learns about perseverance, kindness, and forgiveness. She resolves to imitate her friend instead of nursing her grudges. I thought that was an outstanding statement and helps us to understand and continue to understand John's thought within the text. Do that which is good, imitate that which is good. Do not imitate that which is wicked. Looking at verse 12. Here we have accept Demetrius. Receive him, take him in, welcome him, which is just the opposite of what Diotrephes did. Here's what I want you to recognize, if you would, and it stands out to me. It may not to you, and you can help me go further with it. This stands out to me. There is not one righteous characteristic that John mentions concerning Demetrius. Why? It is my thinking, it is my studied judgment that John doesn't need to call out his righteousness. He's a messenger of God. And what he is going to show to the brethren is that there is a threefold witness of the man's character. Watch this, verse 12. Demetrius hath the witness of all men. Now, what he's saying with that is that John has had witness born to him in the past, and that still is in effect. That hasn't changed. And it would seem like that John is saying he not only has a good witness as to his character from brethren, but from non-brethren as well. He has it from all. What a great character witness these folks make concerning Demetrius. Still in the same verse, and of the truth itself. Look at the truth. Judge righteous judgment. He's telling them, compare what the Bible says, what New Testament teaches, what we have revealed as the proper character of a man of God with what you see in him. And you can bear witness as to what kind of person he is. You don't have to guess. Yea, he continues, verse 12, we also bear witness, and thou knowest that our witness is true. What did he bear witness to? He didn't tell you. He let you know if there is a trial against Demetrius, we have a threefold character witness to bring, and there's not anybody that can refute what the character witness would have to say. All men, the truth with what he does, and we, and the Apostle John includes himself. What do you have to say about the man? Well, he works hard. Well, he leads singing. You don't have to do any of that. You just let it be known. This man's a good man. Receive Demetrius. Accept Demetrius. Don't reject him like it appears Diotrephes did. We conclude verse 13, 14. I had many things to write unto thee, but I am unwilling to write them with ink and pen. But I hope shortly to see thee, and we will speak face to face. Did you notice verse 10 as well as verse 13? Therefore, if I come, I will bring to remembrance. Now he says, I want to say some more things, but not with pen and ink. I will say them when I get there. Turn very quickly or listen very intently to 2 John 1 verse 9. As he concludes that letter with the elect lady, he says, having many things to write unto you, I would not write them with paper and ink, but I hope to come to you and speak face to face that your joy may be made full. He concludes the same way. It would appear that he has a desire to visit the elect lady, obviously, to visit Gaius, that's who he's writing to, and to address personally, in person, what Diotrephes has done so horribly. He concludes, peace be unto thee. The friends salute thee. Salute the friends by name.